To discuss the real issues affecting the Tasman nations, this is Trad Tasman Talk, jointly produced by the Unshackled.net and rightminds.nz. Now, here's Tim Wilms in Australia and Dieuwe Boer in New Zealand.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another week of Trad Tasman Talk on this Friday, the 4th of February, 2022. It is Tim Wilms, editor of The Unshackled, here in Melbourne, where it is 6 p.m.
And this is Dieuwe Boer here from Auckland. It's 8 p.m. here, and as you can see, I'm just a little bit not quite ready yet, so I'm just going to adjust a few things.
I don't know where you had to run off to just before the show started, but
I nearly forgot about the drink.
Oh, that's all it was. I thought you were checking up on the kids or something.
Well, that too, actually, but they were all right. So
okay, yeah, but the drink was the main thing.
That was the important one, yeah.
Has this week been with the Omicron phased approach of Jacinda's?
No real difference this week in terms of any actual changes. Apparently, there were some changes to the mask rules. I'm not 100% sure how they're supposed to work or what they do. Obviously, we have the requirement now that children who are I believe year 4 at school, year 4 and up. Again, I don't have kids quite in that age group, so nothing that really affects me directly. So, and obviously work-wise, mostly from home. But again, there's flexibility there, right? If people need to go into offices or they need to go out, they can go out. And nothing's changed with regards to what the vaccine pass applies to. Plenty of places as well are pretty flexible, I should say. So I haven't had any trouble at all.
And the whole of New Zealand is back at red, which is supposed to slow the Omicron spread. Jacinda admitted early on that there's no way you're going to really suppress it. How's it going?
We are when the case numbers are not growing as much as I would have hoped, but we're just back over 200 today. So not quite a new record, but we hope in the next couple of days to beat the record. So I noted on the last show that there is always the possibility that the government could get this under control, because people said Delta can't be stopped back when we had Delta, but Omicron is a lot more I guess more infectious, but B, also the government isn't doing a full-fledged lockdown this time around. So it does seem like it'll run away, which I believe to be by far the best outcome for New Zealand. Otherwise, we're the hermit kingdom forever.
Oh well, that was the focus or the scrutiny of this week with Western Australia, which we'll get to in a moment, and New Zealand, the last two remaining Western hermit kingdoms, obviously excluding China and North Korea.
North Korea has reopened its border, so New Zealand remains the last true hermit kingdom with a completely closed border.
Oh no, Western Australia is still
I guess that's right. It's not a nation yet though, so it's all right. It doesn't count.
Although Jacinda had a Omicron scare herself, but it more sounded like she was just sort of wanting an excuse to hide Trudeau style.
Yes, she was a close contact. I just saw today that they put out another positive case from the flight that she was on, apparently. So who knows what will happen there, but she herself was negative. I don't think she was sitting anywhere near the infected cluster, so definitely a good opportunity to get out of the bad news for a little while.
We covered last week that it might have been the week before that her fiance Clark Gayford was trying to use his position to get some rats for his musician mates. This time he was trying to pull some strings to get some ivermectin in case he Jacinda became infected, and this is how he was planning to get some ivermectin. It will only be sold to horse owners. Must show a pic of you and your horse. So I believe that's what he tried to show to his GP.
Certainly,
or,
those
at the pharmacy.
those were the rumors. I can neither confirm nor deny the accuracy of that report.
I think because we know that Trudeau, when he went into hiding, probably disguised himself in blackface to blend in. I think Jacinda probably tried to hide blend in at a racetrack.
Well, largely deserted at the moment now, so a good place to hide, right?
Yeah, because there's, what is it, not much sport happening apart from...
That's right. So I just saw New Zealand is missing from some international rugby that's going on. You're probably following that one. But there's some kind of rugby tournament thing on at the moment, and obviously no New Zealand there. No sports games happening anywhere in New Zealand. No sports teams leaving New Zealand. It's all peaceful and quiet, just the way that I like it.
A lot of people, they secretly like that the tourists are not around. Australia is not open to tourists, only to eligible work visa holders, international students, and obviously Australian citizens, residents, and their families. Scott Morrison this week said maybe April open back up to tourists, but given the reputations in the rest of the West that Australia and New Zealand have, there's a lot of people who aren't itching to come back over. I mean, I read the comments on some of the international stories about the latest COVID crazy tyranny in Australia and New Zealand. The comments are like, oh, I once wanted to go or settle there. I'm never going there again.
No, certainly it is going to take a long time for our reputations to recover. Of course, as we'll cover, as we'll discuss later on in the show, the police brutality in Australia is unsurpassed anywhere in the Western world. Thankfully, in New Zealand, the police are, or at least have been, fairly well behaved. There have, of course, been a few isolated incidents with people being dragged away and having altercations with the police, but nothing on the scale of Australia. There even was possibly our police may be getting involved on the side of the protesters now. In fact, today, certain freedom groups or anti-vax conspiracy theorists, as some refer to them as, initiated a citizen's arrest on the COVID response minister, Andrew Little. So they gathered in New Plymouth today at a police station, and they filed the paperwork to the police to request that an arrest be performed on Andrew Little. The charge they have proposed is that of manslaughter for the death of Rory Nairn, who's one of the few confirmed, autopsy-confirmed cases of COVID vaccine death. You can see the pictures there of the post by Damien Dement there on, the lengthy spiel behind, why that's possible. Some of it is true. Some of it, I suspect, a little bit dubious. But it is possible to file a case. Basically, they're filing a police complaint, and the police have given them a case number, and then the police will investigate. Whether they will investigate, we don't know for sure. And then they'll report back with the outcome of the case that's been opened. So they've put various documents in at the court, High Court as well, and they're going to claim they're going to sue the police if the police don't perform the arrest within 24 hours. So we'll know tomorrow if Andrew Little is in jail or not. We'll be able to report back on that in a future show.
We've had over the past couple of years, there's been a few more recently, various activists turning up at police stations to issue common law arrest warrants for various leaders, which of course is not going to go anywhere because
no, it's not.
on the side of their paymasters. It doesn't mean it doesn't matter if you think that you're legally correct. It's who's got the power.
Yeah, that's something. I mean, a lot of this is driven by people who are, sovereign citizens and engaged in the sovereign citizens movement. But what they generally forget to take into account is, of course, that those, the system that has the power, the system that has the monopoly on force, is going to be the system that wins. So it doesn't matter what you think. You work within the system that has the monopoly on force, because they're going to crush you every single time. And so if you can, you have to work within the laws that are recognized by that system, unless you plan to overthrow it by force, of course.
Now, in Eastern Australia, the Omicron curve continues to come down, but more importantly, the hospitalization and ICU numbers are falling. Daily deaths are still higher than what Australians are used to. So there's been 1,103 deaths since the beginning of the Omicron wave in mid-December. That's 1,103 deaths until the end of January. Some of them would have been Delta as well. I'm not sure if they test every dead person for what variant they died with. So over 70s account for 84% of those deaths, and 560 have been in aged care, which has obviously caused a lot of media attention, and the federal opposition has again slammed the Morrison government, calling for the resignation of the Aged Care Services Minister, Richard Colbeck. And he didn't appear at a Senate hearing back in January because he was at the Hobart Cricket Ashes Test in his capacity as sports minister. He's Aged Care Services Minister and sports minister. Now, obviously, every death is a tragedy, but it's not surprising, and in terms of the international evidence, both for COVID deaths and also flu deaths, that over 70s account for the overwhelming majority of deaths with COVID. And aged care facilities, obviously, deaths go on there all the time because a lot of people are in their twilight years and palliative care. So it's 70% of over 70s have had their booster shot. And again, the Morrison government's being criticised. How come it's not 99%? And it's got to think, well, are you going to, what is that, sedate all the aged care residents and possibly...
We're going to hunt them down.
Inject them. I mean, they don't work, and not many of them leave the aged care facility, so it's not like they're participating in the vaccinated economy where they've got a vaccine mandate. But probably in my opinion, the most egregious things about these aged care deaths with COVID is because there's COVID in aged care facilities again, because it's all over the country. They're locked down, and so the old people are isolated from their family, and many of them die alone, which obviously, as I mentioned, aged care facilities death is a common occurrence, but you should be able
we should
to
regard that as worse, that they have to die alone, that nobody can see them, that they decline mentally, physically, and spiritually because they are completely isolated from people, and many of them don't even get given the choice if they'd rather be able to spend that time with their loved ones instead. And I saw the numbers from Fiji today saying over 70% of their deaths had serious comorbidities. We see this as well in the United States. I believe it was about 59% of people who had COVID in hospital were simply in hospital, and so on. Similar case numbers would be there for New Zealand, although we've recently stopped reporting our hospitalization numbers because it was 100% vaccinated in hospital the other day. And
is that a scandal?
Then the numbers disappeared. The numbers disappeared the next day. So that should be a scandal. But that was right. The number of hospitalizations in New Zealand is, at least when they reported last, was 100% vaccinated in hospital.
We get the state and territories in Australia publishing daily hospitalisation numbers. In Victoria, they particularly plummeted over the past week. Only 707 in hospital with COVID and less than 100 in ICU. The Omicron peak hospitalizations, people in hospital with COVID, was 1,200. And the modelling said when they declared the code brown in the hospital system suspending elective surgery, that we could get up to 2,500 hospital admissions as on par with New South Wales. That never happened. In fact, hospitalizations went down in the opposite direction. So there's been immense pressure on the Andrews government to restart elective surgery. Though the nurses union said, "Oh, we shouldn't do that until there's less than 600 people in hospital."
It's horrific.
Which, there's people in pain because they can't get this non-urgent.
Non-urgent for the system.
Necessary, but still necessary elective surgery. It's basically called elective surgery because it's
you're not dying. Like in the next, you're not going to die in the next couple of weeks because of it. That's what they call, that's what they consider elective, right? It's not essential to the system itself, and. We've had this with it was a radio interview this morning. Chris Hipkins being interviewed by Mike Hosking. I don't have the audio for this, but he basically said he was asking Mike Hosking, well, what's essential in terms of a business, right? You're prioritizing certain industries for rapid antigen tests. The phase 2 will change how many what businesses people work for that can go back to work with negative tests and don't have to isolate for 3 weeks. What counts as essential? And he responded by basically saying, well, of course all businesses are essential, but some businesses are more essential than others. And it's just like that with the surgeries too. So all surgery is essential, but some of it's more essential than others, and they're going to determine what's essential and what's not, and then what you can have and what you can't. That's what they've been doing for the past 2 years, and they plan to continue.
We had some movement today in Victoria with the health minister, Martin Foley, stating that from Monday that 50% capacity in elective surgeries at private hospitals and day procedure centres, and then if hospitalizations continue to go down, then look at regional hospitals and then the public hospitals. So basically saying, see how we go. Announced also 1.4 billion into the healthcare system. I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, I think it was 1.3 billion that the Andrews government invested for 4,000 ICU beds, which never came to fruition.
We had zero ICU beds delivered.
So some will go.
It was the case. I don't know if you had some. The issue was they could get the raw materials for ICU, but they couldn't train more nurses, and they may have had similar problems.
So some will go to emergency departments where the real bottlenecks have been. Another 199 million will go into personal protective equipment because we haven't got enough patients and respirators.
Sure.
And then 2 million into expanding the COVID-19 positive pathways program. Now I mentioned the 4,000 ICU beds for 1.3 billion that never eventuated. It's the Australian Productivity Commission found that Victoria has the unhealthiest hospital system in Australia, spends less money per person running public hospitals, fewer beds, fewer staff, and longer wait times in the emergency department. Obviously, our public health response in Victoria relied more on spending money on police rubber bullets, tear gas, and police
pepper spray.
Yes, that was maybe that's where the 1.3 billion from 2020 went into.
We had a change to our border system announced this week. Obviously, the big news item of the week was the journalist who was stuck in Afghanistan. And sorry, I've can't remember her name at the moment. Charlotte. That's right. It was Charlotte Bellis, and she she kind of has a little bit of international fame because during the fall of Afghanistan last year, she was one of the journalists who asked the Taliban, "What do you think of the how are you going to treat women better?" Basically, and I forget the exact question she asked them, but yeah, well, how are you going to treat women better? And they're like, "Oh yeah, of course, yeah, we're gonna
Well, they have treated her better,
and yes, they did, absolutely. She was in trouble, and the Taliban said, "Yeah, sure, you can stay. We'll take care of you, no problem." And the New Zealand government said, "No, you can't." So that was it. And then she made, obviously, big news story. Pregnant woman, a pregnant journalist of all people, can't get back into the country. She just wants to come in here and have her baby. That's her right as a citizen. Like, you can come into your own country because you were born there and you have that right. And they eventually gave her a slot in MIQ, the one that she wanted, because I think they did initially approve her as some kind of emergency thing where she had to follow through within 2 weeks or something. But there are no regular flights in and out of Afghanistan at the moment, so she wasn't able to. She's just had no guarantee that was going to work out. And then they wanted her to apply for being in like immediate danger, like being in a dangerous territory. And she's like, "Well, these I can't say that I'm in danger when they've offered me help." So now the opening has been brought forward. The government says, "Oh, we didn't make any of these changes because of her," but they were pretty quick to make the announcement. And now, possibly by October, the border will be completely open.
October 2022.
Yeah, this year.
Yeah, because Jacinda loves her micromanaged, phased approaches to things, but this is stages.
Steps. We've done stages and phases and steps before as well, I believe, but we're doing steps again for this one because we've run out of different words to call the different systems. And yeah, it's all supposedly going to be changing at the end of this month slowly. And then every month or so from there, it'll slowly open up. The main thing being obviously for citizens, which is it looks like March. So the step 2, at that particular point, at least you can get back into your own country.
Yes, without having to go through the MIQ lottery, which we all know
which for rigged. Some reason, which is rigged because all of Jacinda's and Clark's friends and all of the musicians and the elites and the anybody who is part of the elite classes has no trouble winning the MIQ lottery.
And how do we know that this isn't going to change again when the next variant comes along? Because we've already had the son of Omicron, which I actually heard today that there was an article on The Conversation said that it's actually more like a sister of Omicron, but in reality, BA2 is pretty much exactly the same as BA1. I mean, it's dominant in Denmark, but they seem really terrified of it in Denmark since they lifted all their restrictions. I mean,
it's terrible.
Why should they be terrified?
Yeah. And I know a lot of people who've had Omicron now, and none of them have had it as bad as the flu. So most of these countries are realizing, hey, for most people, it's a cold. Like, it's just basically just a cold. It's not even just the flu. It's just a cold for most people. So why are we still playing these silly games? Well,
Chief Medical Officer Paul Kelly has said he predicts there'll be another Omicron wave in winter, and the flu will make a comeback. But that's pretty presumptuous, given that there'll probably be something else by then. After the Omicron family,
we got to wait for the Omega variant.
Yeah, and its extended family as well. Obviously, they are still pushing boosters. I mentioned particularly for the older, vulnerable population, but it's apparently a concern that only 30% of under 40s have had a booster, even though a lot of them would have natural immunity from recent Omicron infection. And Dan Andrews, he is already expressed his desire. Once Atagi says that you need 3 doses to be fully vaccinated, that he'll mandate that in the vaccinated economy as well. And he was asked about 4th and 5th and 5th vaccines, and this is what he said on Sunday, that mandates are here. We didn't get to 93% without mandates, because the total booster uptake of over 18s is 42%. 16 and 17-year-olds can get their boosters now because they really need it as well. He said, as for the 4th and 5th, let's wait and see how this goes. Being vaccinated saves lives. The notion that this is somehow a bad thing, that doesn't make any sense. Vaccines work. That's right. Yes, sadly, some people have passed away, and again, we send our deepest sympathies to families, but it will be thousands or more, particularly due to Omicron. So he said, and if we weren't out there pushing boosters, or what should really be referred to as third doses, because it's not an optional extra.
Mm-hmm. The third dose.
Even though the third dose doesn't stop the spread. I mean, Justin Trudeau
exactly.
Positive with 3 doses. Liz Truss, the Foreign Secretary of the UK, positive with 3 doses.
Yeah, that's sad. Mm-hmm. Well, we do have more protests. Obviously, you mentioned in Canada. The UK, meanwhile, has just basically opened up. But Canada, certainly big protests in Canada. The freedom convoys there, border blockades, a lot of stuff, a lot of news that people would have been following. And there are now copycat events in Australia and New Zealand. The New Zealand one is planned for this weekend, going to Monday. I haven't seen a huge amount of buzz about it. I mean, it's not it's sort of, again, it's a copycat movement. I think it has limited appeal in that sense. But in Australia, certainly it looks like a lot more interest and quite a bit of activity around the convoys there.
It wasn't quite a convoy of trucks. It was a mixture of cars and
I suspect it'll be similar like that in New Zealand as well. Yeah.
So they've all parked at outside the National Library of Australia on the Patrick White lawns, and so there have been some quite brutal confrontations with the ACT police, trying to move on those who are parked and camped on the lawn, because the National Capital Authority, which is the federal government body responsible for has jurisdiction over the parliamentary triangle, but the ACT police still enforce the directives of the National Capital Authority. Sounds, very sort of parliamentary triangle, gives off sort of Illuminati vibes that it's called that. So they ordered the ACT police to remove camping equipment and cars that they deemed illegally occupying the lawn. And yet the
Get off my lawn.
ACT police, as like their New South Wales and Victorian counterparts, came in pretty brutally, and I'll just play some snippets of that.
Watch them! Cowards! Watch the people behind the first line! Get back! What are you going to do? Stand up! Come on, back up! Oh my god! Oh my god! They're just tackling people. What the hell went on there? Oh, they've got a female as well. Oh my god! What is wrong with you? Oh my God! He's helping her up! He's helping her up!
Our lands abound in there.
So those ACT police officers who clinked their capsicum spray cans as if they were beer cans, they were counselled after that, which basically means, well, it's not even a slap on the wrist, but they have charged the ACT police a woman 66 to charges of assaulting a frontline community service provider and resisting a public official. Another 2 men were charged with obstructing police and face court on Thursday. The ACT ambulance service attended to treat 2 people with minor injuries after police retreated, but no one was taken to hospital. And we had this week, because the protesters were outside the National Press Club, where Scott Morrison was giving his address, which we'll get to. And politicians don't like being under siege, so I this is more than a coincidence that this week the Home Affairs Minister announced that they would pledge $60 million to combat violent extremism, because the rapid rise in conspiracy theories during the COVID-19 pandemic and fears for MPs' safeties.
I wonder what could have brought about all this chaos.
As we've covered on a previous show, the globalists, their biggest fear now is social cohesion breaking down, and the fact the elites are not trusted.
This was brought up by I think it was Matthew Hooton. I saw had an article in the New Zealand Herald yesterday, again talking about how the greatest either threat or opportunity or duty or whatever challenge, I guess, that would face a hypothetical Prime Minister, Christopher Luxon, would be to fix the social cohesion problems. Again, obviously with no actual analysis of what the problem with social cohesion is and why social cohesion is trending down, and why I'm not sure what the opposite of social cohesion is. Probably trending towards anarchy, and effectively, why are we trending towards anarchy? Let's fix it, but we can't talk about why things are broken to begin with.
Now, what's happening in Canberra or elsewhere is nothing compared to what is happening over in the other hermit kingdom, Western Australia, where the dear leader, Mark McGowan, continues to tell his citizens that they're the envy of the world. The Qantas CEO, Alan Joyce, since he's had to basically remove the Perth stopover from the Australia to UK flights, he did compare Western Australia to North Korea, and now it looks like Western Australia could be having North Korean style famines with because of flash flooding in South Australia. It's blocked the Nullarbor road and rail network, so food and other essential supplies can't get into Western Australia, so they're hardly self-sufficient. They can't eat iron ore. So there's now talk of some of the trucks are taking the long route through New South Wales, Queensland, Northern Territory. Central Australia has also had its supply chains cut off. Alice Springs has been hit by food shortages. But the supermarkets have said that we've still got a large local supply chain. 80% of fresh fruit and vegetables is from source growers in Western Australia. So yeah, it's not all definitely not all well in the Hermit Kingdom. They're recording on average about 20 local cases per day, and they've still got the 14-day the quarantine and the more stricter definition of close contacts, because they haven't had a widespread outbreak yet. And because what is it? This was a absurd thing that they did. A truck driver was told to self quarantine for 14 days in the cabin of his truck after he tested positive at the border into Western Australia. He was.
I think that's against the Geneva Convention.
Yeah. Later, he was allowed to quarantine at an appropriate facility, and WA's vaccinated economy has come in, which even excludes the unvaccinated from bottle shops, and they've also got a
no more gin.
Strict indoor mask mandate where you have to have a proper medical exemption to prove why you're not wearing a mask in a public indoor space. And
who issues the proper medical exemptions in this case?
Well, the doctors.
Okay,
or it can be your GP. But this is what happened last night. There was a local Karen near this church who noticed that parishioners were going in and out without masks. So called the WA police, and this officer came, interrupted the mass, and demanded the papers of all the parishioners who weren't wearing masks. Now, this is super disgusting.
Wow. Yeah, certainly have not. I think outside of Canada, I haven't heard of this one happening before, and that's totally.
It hasn't happened over Easter, to my knowledge, as well.
No, and no, the police do not even have the authority to enter a church building without, permission from the appropriate, church officers or elders or priests or any presbyter. This is a huge overstep of state authority into what is the domain of the church. Right? You cannot interrupt a church service. In fact, it's generally speaking a crime to interrupt a church service for good reason. Just for the police, I think they can do that. Tells you just how far things are gone. That a police officer would think that that's a normal thing to do. That he would think that's that it's legal, which it might not even be, and then B, that he thinks it's appropriate, even if he had been told to do so. Yeah.
And we had Scott Morrison, because he wants to retain seats in Western Australia, endorse the indefinite border closure, saying he trusts Mark McGowan's judgment on this, which is another example of his political cowardice. Because
sorry.
No, you go.
I was going to say there was a comment from Dr. Foster I wanted to touch on. He's saying, I'm hearing that church attendance here in Auckland is down 60%. Imagine the effect of that on the coffers, let alone other aspects. There are some sort of lawsuits or judicial reviews being requested in the courts at the moment by a number of churches, but very few of them are actually taking steps to engage in any kind of civil disobedience, because even at least under red and under orange and green or whatever, there is no way for a church to conduct church services at all, and this is indefinitely, of course. This is for the churches themselves won't take a stand because they're completely taken up in the material, this materialism where they believe they're we're going to follow the advice of the experts in the science and blah blah blah. Like somehow that's the most important thing to people who want to worship God in a public way. According to his word and how, engage in and participate in the public worship, to make that subservient to the requirements of the state and, the so-called scientific expert and consensus. That's what these churches indicate is their highest priority. So, why would you bother? Why would you go? If your church told you that they believe that none of that was really important, would you be going home? Would you go somewhere? Maybe you go somewhere else. You wouldn't. If the people who are supposed to believe their religion and clearly don't believe their religion, then why are people going to bother? And this is going to have massive flow-on effects throughout all of New Zealand society. Definitely, many churches simply will not recover. Many of it is just dead husks. They're on the verge of collapse, and this will be not the final nail in the coffin, but this is going to accelerate the decline there, because people can see, oh, well, you don't believe that in separation of church and state, because you believe the state can dictate how the church ought to worship, and you don't actually believe that the church should assert its authority in any kind of hypothetical civil disobedience. Would the government fight them? Would you get police officers storming churches? Is any of that going to happen? We've seen it happen, to a very small extent in Canada, but generally speaking, they would only try and disrupt afterwards, right? They would.
Yeah, that's what they've done in the east of Australia.
Yeah, and so on, and so they, exactly. So, is there any kind of, and it's one of those, like, you can't arrest us all problems, but this is it. It's up to these church leaders to lead. It's up to them to say, yes, we believe the Bible. We believe that God is real. We believe that worshiping God is important, and more important than all of this other stuff that's going on. And they won't do it, and so people can see the true beliefs behind that.
Well, we had a Christian school in Australia this past week try to stand up and affirm their Christian beliefs. The City Point Christian College in Brisbane, before the beginning of school, Queensland is starting a week later, they issued to parents this contract of enrolment, which one of it included a declaration of faith. And the controversial part of it was down here, that we believe that any form of sexual immorality, including but not limited to adultery, fornication, homosexual acts, bisexual acts, bestiality, incest, pedophilia, and pornography, is sinful and offensive to God and is destructive to human relationships and society.
Very good. But that would be par for the course for any actual Christian school, certainly.
And this became a huge media firestorm when it was amplified by the Sunday Project. They also mentioned that a student can only be enrolled in their biological gender. They spoke to a past student of the college who mentioned that they might have been the inspiration for the enrollment contract.
The contract stipulates a right to exclude a student from the college who no longer identifies as their biological sex.
So I'm a former student at City Point Christian College. I had planned to wear a dress to the formal. They told me that I would be ruining everyone else's night by showing up with a dress. I do believe that I may have been a catalyst in pushing that forward just because I spoke out against the school. They wanted to prevent anyone like me from doing anything like that ever again. I feel at the core of this contract, it's just discrimination against queer people and just blatant disrespect for anyone who's different from the norm to get an education or just exist in their own lives.
Ominous music.
Yeah, that was rated by Lisa Wilkinson, who we mentioned last week. Jacinta's #1 Australian fan. I wonder if she supported Jacinta excluding a pregnant Kiwi in Afghanistan from coming back to avoid a bin fire.
And anyway, so you can, I think, I mean, I guess, is this school, the school appears to be quite large and possibly even a sort of public school, I guess, which is where...
Well, with a lot of these Christian schools in Australia, a lot of parents send their children to these schools because they're private schools which have more resources, and so I think they're going to get better grades, and also for the status symbol as well, and don't really take the Christian ethos seriously at all, which I guess that this school was trying to make it clear that this is a really...
it looks like they got around to that a little bit too late, because I definitely know the Christian schools I know, the students like that would have been filtered out beforehand. Or
No boy would be allowed to go to the formal with a dress.
If the formal asked if a boy asked to wear a dress to the formal, he wouldn't ever be seen again 5 minutes later. That kind of thing. So it seems like they were a little bit too lax and tried to tighten that up a bit too late, and they got a lot of media attention out of it. Who knows? They sort of apologized, I believe. I saw that they did an apology.
Well, they withdrew the contract.
They didn't apologize, right? So that's all right. So it looks like they're trying to lie low.
He said the principal, Brian Mulheron, he did apologize to the family, students, and parents. Would no longer be asked to agree to the contract. He said he deeply regrets some students felt they would have been discriminated against. He said, as stated previously, the college does not and will not discriminate against any student because of their sexuality or gender identity.
I'm pro-discrimination there. I prefer my Christian
essential to our faith that being gay or transgender in no way diminishes a person's humanity or dignity in God's eyes. They had already the Queensland Education Minister Grace, who has a non-binary child, had already referred the school to the Independent Schools Accreditation Board. It was called something like that, and the Queensland Human Rights Commission. And this media firestorm has been used by the moderate Liberal MPs to further water down their proposed religious discrimination act. So church schools will lose the right to expel gay students as PM deals with moderate Liberals. So they include Dave Sharma, Katie Ellen, Fiona Martin, and Angie Bell. And we had Scott Morrison. This is a quote from him. He said, "I don't support that City Point Christian College contract. I mean, my kids go to Christian schools here in Sydney, and I wouldn't want my school doing that either. In the religious discrimination bill, we will have an amendment that will deal with that." So
I should have, Reza, I didn't know you were going to put up this graphic, but I could have given you a similar graphic of National Party leader Chris Luxon talking about the gender conversion. So was it the conversion therapy bill that the select committee reported back on? He said the same thing. He basically said, "I'm voting for this. I fully support LGBT plus blah blah blah. I really, we want to end discrimination, etc." And he fully supports the ban on conversion therapy, which kind of ties into this as well. Where basically, it's going to be illegal to counsel anything from prayer to encouragement to counseling. Telling somebody that, hey, actually you're born a boy, you're still a boy, you'll always be a boy, and that they want to criminalize that, and that's something that Chris Luxon fully supports because he has to sell his soul to become the leader of the National Party.
Now, Jacinta, obviously, these lockdowns and the various social welfare programs as well, they're not free, and printing money has caused a lot of inflation. So what's the other way for the government to raise money?
Certainly, in what's being proposed is perhaps a slight distraction by Grant Robertson is an income insurance, social insurance tax, scheme. It's not a tax. They're not calling it a tax. He said it's not a tax.
It's never called a tax.
And basically, okay, if you lose your job for whatever reason, you're made redundant, like you're useless and lazy at work and you get fired, then you get 6 months of income insurance. And this can be paid for by everyone, providing like a 1.39. So 1.39 contribution. Hi, Amy. And a 1.39 from the employer and the employee, which obviously that comes out of your wages if you're an employee, because your employer is taking that, calculating that into what your salary is going to be. So it's effectively a 3% tax, just so that some people can get 6 months of 80% of their wage for 6 months after they lose their job. And this seems like an incredibly inefficient and horrible way to do it, because guess what? If you have stable employment, you're paying that extra 3% tax forever and you never get to make use of it. This is not a compulsory savings where you can draw from the savings that you've had to put aside, or the private insurance that you've bought, whatever decision that you've made to be just spend your money in the most effective way. It's just the usual labor socialist scheme where everyone contributes to it, and only those who try, the people who benefit the most tend to be the ones who didn't contribute to it in that way.
And with this week seeing Jacinda's human rights credentials basically shredded, it has resulted in
So we had two polls here. So this one here still doesn't look too bad for Labour. So you can see there that they're at about 40%, dropping slightly. National is finally back up into 30%. Altogether, on this poll here from One News, they would still eke out a slight victory. There was a second poll that was done by Roy Morgan, which actually showed the opposition, so the National Act coalition government, could get 50%, basically just at 50%, which is the first time the opposition has polled higher than the government in any poll since 2017. So the trend is moving in that direction. Not every single poll is yet showing that the opposition is ahead, but that certainly is where the trend is going. And I think some of these schemes announced this week are not necessarily going to help the Prime Minister, especially we're going to give extra income insurance, but it's actually just a tax for everyone. People are able to see through that at the moment, especially when we're going to be heading into what looks like some very rough economic times. Inflation at record highs, house prices are just still out of control. Food, petrol, everything is up and up and up, and is showing no signs of slowing down.
I noticed that in the UK, the Tory government abandoned their social insurance hike, and the UK is going through really bad inflation driven by higher energy prices. So similar situations there. You're obviously not impressed with Christopher Luxon. Why is he doing so much better than Judith Collins?
The press likes him more. He's more, how do we say? He's one of them, a global homo. He's all in on the globalist agenda, and that's why they like him. So there's some stuff about him they don't like, which you can see they kind of whittle away a little bit and try to get him to change and trip him up. That's because they're trying to basically groom him to replace Jacinda Ardern eventually. Because leaders do get worn out; they only last for a few terms, and they want. So that's it. That's just they like him more than they like Judith. That's the main thing. And Judith was quite gaffe prone in a certain sense, that she didn't know how to play that game very well, and she would focus on issues that were not that important, or that were distractions, or that the people didn't care about. She was kind of out of touch with, I guess, where the media had trained people to be. And Luxon's really on board with that. He's he knows how to play the media game and to become a media favorite. So that's why he does so well. And Judith just didn't have that ability to smash through. Absolutely. Dr. Foss talking about food here. Absolutely insane prices for food in the supermarkets. Amy's actually ordering from a company that just does delivery in Auckland, new company that started up, not part of the duopoly. And their fresh fruit and veggie prices are about a half of what you pay in the supermarket at the moment. So it's called Supie, SUPIE. And we just order sort of different veggie boxes from them, and about half the price. But certainly it's absolutely insane if you go into a supermarket anywhere in New Zealand.
And now the next New Zealand general election isn't until the second half of 2023. So
end of next year, basically. Yeah.
We'll see what the economic situation is like, and if Jacinda opens up the international borders
by then.
In Australia, our federal election is due in the first half of this year, and Scott Morrison is running out of time to turn things around. Obviously, he won the 2019 federal election with the polls not in his favour, but they weren't this bad. And everyone assumes that Newspoll and the other various polling companies have recalibrated their polling sampling methods. So this was on January 30th. Labor 56, Coalition 44, two-party preferred, and Scott Morrison only preferred PM by 2 points now, which it's gone down over the summer, 43% to Anthony Albanese, 41%. And I mentioned he was when he was besieged this week by the Canberra protests. That was for his National Press Club address, NPC is its initials. So he addressed them last week. So basically he outlined his vision for the country this year, and also tried to admit mistakes and mismanagement in response to the various stages of the pandemic. The NPC membership, when it came to Q&A, were quite hostile, but it was Network 10's political correspondent Peter Van Onselen who stole the show, revealing 2-year-old text messages between former Premier Gladys Berejiklian and an unnamed federal cabinet minister.
Gladys Berejiklian, and there's somebody that you wanted to run actually at the next election. I've been provided with a text message exchange between the former New South Wales Premier and a current Liberal cabinet minister. I've got them right here. In one, she describes you as, quote, a horrible, horrible person, going on to say she did not trust you and you're more concerned with politics than people. The minister is even more scathing, describing you as a fraud and, quote, a complete psycho. Does this exchange surprise you? And what do you think it tells us?
Well, I don't know who you're referring to or the basis of what you've put to me. But I obviously don't agree with it, and I don't think that's my record.
You could see his blink off the chart there.
Oof. Yeah. Wow. I don't think I've seen the media ask a question like that of Jacinda ever.
I
can tell.
One of her cabinet colleagues would leak a conversation like that. Peter Van Onselen has confirmed that it was the federal cabinet minister who directly leaked it to him. Gladys Berejiklian said she has no recollection of such but that doesn't mean she denies it. It was previously reported she called Scott Morrison an evil bully, so we know that she's had quite the tense relationship with him, even though Scott Morrison said, "Oh, we're such good friends. I want her to be, one of my colleagues in Canberra." And now, the next day, many cabinet ministers came out to deny they were the leak. So it's been a real game of who done it and Cluedo. Former Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull was on the 7:30 program on the ABC last night, and he actually named who it was who leaked the text message. I'll play it now.
Everybody has a theory about who the cabinet minister is. Have you got a theory about who might be the texting minister?
Yes, I will name the culprit.
Right. Yeah.
It was Colonel Mustard in the library with a smartphone.
Okay, thank you for that.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, and Colonel Mustard was a guest on ABC News Breakfast this morning, explaining how the exchange came about. Now, so that was a bit of unexpected humour from Malcolm Turnbull on a very serious forum.
Certainly. That's wonderful interactions in Australian politics that you certainly don't get to see in New Zealand, to my recollection at all. Nothing anywhere near that.
Now we're coming up to the top of the hour, so we've got time for some Q&A for people in the right minds and the Unshackled YouTube chat. I'll put the entropy link in.
Yeah, you reminded me of how much I miss playing Cluedo. I used to play Cluedo all the time with my siblings, and haven't played a game in a very, very long time. So might need to organize like a Right Minds Cluedo game. We could rename the characters to politicians or something.
Over on Entropy, which I've put the link in, there's a $5 super chat, US dollar super chat from Naughty Design. Also sent through $3 on Monday's Tim's News Explosion. So thank you for another super chat. Naughty Design said, cunts the lot, go the truckers, freedom and rum.
I prefer freedom and gin, but thank you very much. We did have some questions earlier. I saw it from Mary Nobles, who was saying that COVID wasn't real, or vaccines don't work because terrain theory is true. I did want to address that as well. Terrain theory is total garbage. You need to look into miasma theory. That's the true.
And of course, just for the YouTube algorithm, COVID is real. Works to a degree.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't realize that we may trigger those algorithms by citing the wrong question. Sorry, ask better questions. Go on. Amy also did mention as well here saying she's never played Cluedo, so I know what we're going to be doing tomorrow.
Oh, that's something you've never. You mentioned that you played Cluedo so many times. I assumed that you'd played it with.
Yeah, Amy. I was just always. This is growing up with my brother and sister, so we shall see. Anyway, it's a really great game. Absolutely, if people here haven't played Cluedo, it's awesome. Certainly. We also should probably announce next week's show, because this is Trad Tasman Talk number 99. There is going to be a number 100 special next week, next Friday. We do hope to have some special guests. Well, at the very least, we're going to have Stephen Berry here with us.
The three of us together for the first time.
Also Origin and Amy are invited to join us. So, but we'll see. They haven't confirmed yet. So
Origin.
Brother, I haven't pitched it to them properly, but they're both watching now, so I've just invited them.
Origin, in case people are not aware, he is the new voiceover guy for Trad Tasman Talk. That's his booming voice you hear at the beginning and the end. He did appear on our 2020 New Zealand election night live stream.
And he certainly did. And also we do a podcast together every couple of weeks. We would have done one this week, but I was filling in for Stephen this week. So we had an episode recently on the science and Christianity and pagan religions. So you go to the Right Minds YouTube channel for that one. I haven't yet uploaded it onto the website, but it's accessible via the Right Minds YouTube channel. So if you're interested in our podcast, that's the place to be.
It'll be good to reflect on the journey. The show started September 2019, but we'll probably tell the story about how you and I first became acquainted, because it goes back right to the beginning of the formation of the Unshackled, and one of our earliest fans who was a Kiwi who connected both of us.
Exactly, yes. And I mean, Right Minds started about 2016 as well. I think that's sort of the context that we got in touch as well, had to do with the 2016, 2017 elections, both America and New Zealand. So we'll certainly tell some of those stories on next week's show.
Well, I hope there's not too much other news for us to discuss. Otherwise, it'll be another long show.
No, it won't be. We're going to wrap this one up, and we'll be back next week. We'll go light on the news next week. We'll talk about some more personal stuff, and I think we're going to take a whole bunch of audience questions as well. So do bring more questions about non-news related topics next week, and I think we'll have a really good sort of special show
AMA about
AMA is a good one,
and the history of the show.
Cool. All right, well, that's all of it from me. We have another public holiday on Monday here in New Zealand, obviously, I'll say another one. So we had one this week in Auckland, one of our special regional days. And then this Monday is Waitangi Day. So we will celebrate the signing of the Treaty of Waitangi, the formation of New Zealand, and it is. I don't think there are any special commemorations happening. We also, I believe, it's the Queen's Jubilee this weekend
Diamond
as well,
Jubilee,
or Diamond Jubilee
on the throne.
And again, basically no real celebrations here in New Zealand. So,
well, what is it? We should say "God save the Queen" because her children, grandchildren, will turn the royal family into woke.
May she live forever.
Yeah. Good night.
Good night.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's edition of Trad Tasman Talk. To keep up with the latest real news and analysis from the Tasman nations, visit theunshackles.net and rightminds.nz.